All that's left now of Linda Yarborough's HBO home movie system is the tripod on her roof that held up the antenna and a few wires that go inside the house. But Linda says she also has some hard feelings left since she had the home movie system removed. The problem, she says, began with the installation. Installers strung the antenna cable through her sliding patio door. She couldn't close it, so they charged her extra, to her dismay, to put the cable through the walls and ceiling. But the worst problem, Linda says, was when lightning allegedly struck the antenna. Okay, now when the lightning hit, can you tell me what it hit, what kind of damage you had here?
It traveled down their cable, centralized in their box, which was lying on the floor over this air conditioning heating duct, exploded the box, knocked all these pictures off of the wall, shattered the carpeting here, hit this electrical outlet, then traveled into our TV, did a lot of damage in there, burned out the components, cost us our new TV warranty, even though they repaired the TV.
Yeah. Okay, but the first thing that was hit was the box, the HBO
That
box.
was where it centralized. Electricity was flying everywhere.
Sparks.
Yes, sparks and blue streaks.
Okay. HBO officials refused to pay for the damage. They claim the lightning hit their house wires, not their antenna. Well, Linda's homeowner's insurance did cover the damage, but the Yarboroughs had to pay the $100 deductible from their own pocket. Linda thinks HBO should pay since the antenna was not grounded against lightning.
No, they did not put the ground wire, nor did they advise us at the time of installation that it was not grounded. Or we wouldn't have had it up there. We would never have had it installed if we did not know that it was grounded.
Linda maintains the lightning hit the HBO antenna. They took pictures of the roof damage. It shows where the antenna cable was allegedly burnt off by the lightning and where the wooden shingles were damaged directly beneath the antenna tripod. Linda says at one time an HBO official came out and agreed to take care of the damages, but never returned.
After about a month of hassling, Tip McKay did finally agree that, with a handshake to my husband, that this would be taken care of the next day. They would contact our insurance agent. They did not. They have not lived up to their end of the bargain at all.
I contacted HBO General Manager Dick Burbridge by phone. He disagreed that lightning hit the antenna, causing the damage, but just to settle the issue, Burbridge said he would reimburse the Yarboroughs for the $100 deductible they had to pay for their insurance coverage. However, I was curious about the HBO policy of not grounding their antennas, so I took the question to the Action 4 Engineering Department, which deals daily with antennas and receivers. They're always happy to answer questions I bring them. Assistant Chief of Engineering Willard Hines commented,
"Well, if it being the highest object around, lightning is subject to strike this, and if there's no ground, it could blow up the TV set or could set the house afire."
Well, just to be sure, I took the question of grounding HBO antennas to the American Standards Testing Bureau. By telephone interview, they recommended that the customer put a lightning rod on top of his house that is higher than the HBO antenna, because otherwise, they say, the antenna will act as a lightning rod, carrying the charge inside the house. Now, the National Fire Protection Association, which sets electrical codes for this country, also recommends that the HBO antennas be grounded outside the house. The Underwriters Laboratory in Chicago also says HBO antennas must be grounded to the earth, or a customer risks damage to his television and to his home wiring. I also checked with John Fagan, an electrical engineer at the University of Oklahoma. Fagan has done some studies on lightning, and he says HBO should ground the antennas. He says a ground wire would drain the static charge from the antenna and reduce the risk of lightning striking it. Just the opposite of what HBO officials told me. They say not grounding the antenna reduces the risk of a lightning strike, but I could find no authority who agreed with that statement. The Hillcrest Senior Citizen Center is a government-subsidized complex on Southwest 59th Street. About 6 of the residents told volunteer worker Mary Martinez they had been trying to find out for a year what the substance was that was falling from their ceilings and what could be done about it. Not wanting to cause trouble, the 6 or so residents told Mary about the problem, and she described it for me.
They tell me that it falls down from the ceiling and it circulates around the room in the air, or it just falls right to the floor. And they have to pick it up and clean it up real often, even daily at times. And at night, they claim that it gets in their eyes and their nose and their mouth as they're sleeping in bed.
Have they noticed any irritation or breathing problems? Can they tell if that's being affected?
Okay, now as far as breathing, no, but people have told me of eye irritations that they believe is a result directly of the substance falling out of the ceiling. Some rooms, it's much worse than others. Some falls in big chunks like that you see there, other in little fine particles that appear to be like dust, floating through the air.
Mary said the residents had asked the Oklahoma City Housing Authority to paint the ceilings over, but were reportedly told there was not enough money at the time or that the painters were too busy to get to it. Mary said the residents' biggest fear was that asbestos might be in the substance. It appeared to be a fibrous, clinging material, perhaps found in some ceiling tile or insulation. I asked the State Health Department to have a look at a sample of the material to see if it might be cancer-causing asbestos or harmful in any way. Dale McCard is with the State Asbestos Project and studies samples from Oklahoma schools that might have the harmful asbestos. McCard took a look at the sample we brought in from Hillcrest and showed me the results. All right, now, did you find any evidence of asbestos in this sample?
Not in that sample. That sample is apparently, as far as I've seen thus far, cellulose. I really haven't looked at it that much, though.
Some people have said they have eye irritations. What do you think about cellulose? Can it cause any kind of problems for people with respiratory, cardiac problems?
First of all, it would seem to fit my rule of thumb that when you see a lot of fugitive dust collected on flat surfaces, then they have too much dust, whatever it might be, in that particular living quarter. And this is a senior citizens center, as I understand, so that implies older people. And with the cellulose fibers that we have here, they would possibly have some problems with eye irritation, skin irritation. I think perhaps more likely to have a problem with lung problems because of their age. It depends somewhat on the amount of these fibers that are in this building.
I reported the findings to Jack Womack, the director of the Oklahoma City Housing Authority. He told me they had inspected several rooms at Hillcrest and took samples of ceiling material to the technical research lab to find out what it was.
Our lab test on the ceiling samples found absolutely nothing there that would be dangerous. There was no asbestos. It's a blown acoustical tile type ceiling. It's a cellulite paper type base, and they found nothing there. Some of the samples we had, other people that had brought up, we found fiber lint. We took samples out of vacuum cleaner bags, and at that point we found carpet lint, just normal type stuff that you would find. Nothing from the lab that would indicate there was a problem at all of any kind.
Just a few days ago, it didn't look like a Merry Christmas ahead for the Tom Opelt family of Groton, Connecticut. The Opelts had lived in an apartment there, but were moving west with all their belongings in a trailer when it caught on fire, just as they crossed the border into Oklahoma.
And we got as far as about 40 miles, 49 miles east of Tulsa, and we noticed our trailer was on fire.
I see.
And we lost everything we own.
Tell me about what happened when the fire department came. Somebody called the fire department for you.
Well, after we noticed the trailer was on fire, and I ran up to the glass house to get someone to get a fire extinguisher, I guess the owner called, and they put the fire out, and then as they were leaving, they asked for a mailing address, which we gave them, and then he told us then, after the fire was out, that it would be $200 and that they would bill us for it.
What do you think about that?
I think it's rotten. We sell everything we own to get money to leave, and now we're out of money now. We're staying with my brother's sister, and they're supporting us for the time being until my husband finds a job.
So you're going to stay here then rather than go on to California?
Yeah, we'll stay here.
Well, talk about bad luck. Not only did they lose almost everything they owned, now they were faced with a $200 bill to the Vinita Fire Department, which they could not afford. The Opelts were traveling west because of some more bad luck back in Connecticut.
Well, last winter my husband suffered from double pneumonia, and the doctor told him that we had to move from Connecticut because he wouldn't live through another hard winter.
The Opelts had relatives in Edmond, where they are staying now. They and their 4 children, ranging from 1.5 to 8 years old, crowded into a mobile home with their relatives, sharing their food and clothes, while Tom Opelt looks for a job here. The Opelts had lived in Oklahoma before, but had never had the need to experience Oklahoma generosity. This time they did. When I told Tom Fenimore of Colonel Corn about the Opelts' plight, he offered to help. Well, it's a busy time of year for the popcorn business, but Tom, his wife Sherry, and their children took time out to help. They donated $500 to the Opelts to pay the Vinita Fire Department $200 for putting out the trailer fire and to help get the family back on their feet until Mr. Opelt finds his job. They also rounded up some extra clothing and some toys for the children. Sylvester the cat will replace a burned-up teddy bear, which had caused some concern for one of the Opelt children. So with that and some Colonel Corn, the Opelts' Christmas spirits were raised. In Your Corner wishes them good luck. And we give the In Your Corner Good Guy Award to the Tom Fenimore family and Colonel Corn for warming up the holidays Oklahoma style for a family in need. This is Brad Edwards, In Your Corner, wishing you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Not a bit, not a bit at all.
Janine Brandon says she was working for the Alpha Mud Company the first half of 1981. Her employer, Alpha president David Cox, needed to buy some new equipment. She says he didn't want to take the time to go through the normal loan process, so she lent him $9,000, money she had left from the sale of a house following her divorce. The money was to be paid back in 30 days with 2% interest. However, she later signed a contract to convert the cash into stock in the Alpha Mud Company, and as a return on her investment, they were to make her house payment. Well, the contract also stated that they would buy back the stock from her anytime prior to December 31st, 1982.
I felt safe if I could get it back, the original $9,000, anytime I needed it, and if they were making the house payment, that took the pressure off me. So then leaving it over there was, in my eyes, doing more for me than putting it in like a certificate of deposit.
Janine was working as a secretary for Alpha Mud while waiting for a computer job there, which never materialized, so she quit. She says Alpha soon stopped making her house payment. That, along with other financial problems for her and her 2 sons, forced her to ask for her $9,000 investment back as her contract provided.
We're living on $500 a month, and that all the utilities, groceries, and everything else comes out of that, and it's extremely difficult. Plus, like the gas line broke, and not counting replacing the whole line, I had a $200 gas bill that I've been having to pay on. They adjusted it down some, but I've been having to pay on that so much a month, so that's made the gas bill really high, too.
Janine says David Cox of Alpha Mud told her he would have to sell the stock before returning her money, but when she continued to seek her money back, she got this reaction.
Oh, the typical attitude of a dumb female, you know, just ignore and just pacify her and she'll be fine. She won't cause any problems.
Since the case involved the sale of stock, I talked with Administrator of the Oklahoma Securities Commission, Frank Marley, who said they look into cases such as this after establishing if there is a valid complaint against a company.
So that we would determine why the monies weren't available to make that representation come true. And generally decide if the company is having a difficulty that needs to be cognizable under the courts. Finally, the action itself may result in litigation as to the violations of the Securities Act, the possible misrepresentations under the Act. If the company is having a solvency problem, then it may very well end up in conservatorship or receivership, with the company being operated and very likely liquidated for the benefit of this investors and all others.
Marley suggested that Janine bring her complaint in for them to study. In the meantime, I contacted Alpha Mud Incorporated to talk with its president, David Cox. The Alpha Mud Company is located here on Highline Drive off of South Meridian. David Cox would not appear on camera, but over the telephone he told me he's no longer president of Alpha Mud, but now with the Alpha Energy Company. However, Cox said his energy company is interested in buying Alpha Mud stock and that he would give Janine Brandon her $9,000 investment back any time, as it states in the contract. Well, I said, how about giving it back to her today? Cox replied there was no one around to sign a check today, but that he would do it in a couple of days. Janine Brandon says she's dubious about that since she allegedly has been trying to get her money back for so long now. So we'll be checking back Wednesday with the Alpha Mud Company to see if the company and David Cox will live up to the terms of their contract. Yesterday, we told you the story of a doctor's office on West Britain Road that has been trying for a couple of years to get a cement traffic island removed from in front of their parking lot. The island was put there when Britain Road was widened. However, Milda Mason, who works in the office, says their patients complain about trying to avoid the island and almost back into cars whizzing by on Britain Road. I talked with the State Department of Transportation about the project yesterday to see who put it there and if it could be removed. Well, it turned out that the road widening project was drawn up by Oklahoma City. It was built with federal funds, and the work was done by the state. Complicated enough. So the state said Oklahoma City was responsible. Well, today I contacted City Councilman Bob Franks, who checked on the matter. He said Dan Boland, the contract administrator for Oklahoma City's engineering department, said the state did the project, so they were responsible, not the city. Well, that took us back to zero. So Councilman Frank said he would check further to find out if the city can remove or at least narrow the traffic island. I heard from Juliet McConnell and talked to her as she was leaving for her job as a hospital parking lot cashier. Juliet has a criminal record, a drug distributing charge 11 years ago in the state of Louisiana. She was only 20 at the time. She received a suspended sentence and 5 years probation. That's all in the past. It's the future she's worried about now.
Well, like I'm a night auditor for motels, I've got about 6 years experience in that, and they won't hire me in any of these motels because I have been convicted of a felony, and you're in charge of the money at night and their records and everything else, and you've got pass keys and stuff. They won't let you do it because they figure you're a crook if you've ever been in trouble.
Juliet's been attending college trying to better herself, but that old criminal record keeps popping up to haunt her.
I just like to get to where I can have a good job. I was studying accounting at South Oklahoma City Junior College, and they said I can't become a CPA because of this. So why study accounting? They make less than $4 an hour. They make about $600-700 a month, and I'm making that now.
I went to work on Juliet's problem first by calling the Louisiana parish that has her criminal record. I found that by the Louisiana Constitution, Juliet now has a pardon from that state and can write in for a copy of it to hopefully influence a future employer. However, the crime will stay on the record in Louisiana. I also found that even with a pardon, she still should tell the truth about her record when applying for a job. That word comes from Tinker Air Force Base, Oklahoma's largest employer.
We will have situations where we see that they have convictions or anywhere from drunk driving to drug handling and things like that. So long as they are honest about listing those on their application and let us know about it, then they have not falsified their application and they're due for consideration for jobs that they're qualified to perform.
McDaniel says applicants for any federal job, including tinker, go through the Office of Personnel Management, where they are given a suitability check first.
With a conviction for a felony that was 11 years old, in all probability the individual would clear the suitability hurdle and be considered as a person that is probably should be considered for employment.
Now for the latest development on the traffic is blocking the parking lot of a doctor's office here on Britton Road near the intersection with May Avenue. Well, you may recall the doctor's assistants complained that patients were unable to park here easily. And even worse, the patients were trying to dodge this island when they were backing out into the busy Britton Road, causing accidents. Well, it turns out the island was put here when the road was widened. Now get this, it was a city project done with federal funds, and the work was done by the state, a rather complicated setup. Well, the state says the city is now responsible for this traffic island, but the city said the state designed it, so they're responsible for it. The doctor's office just wants it removed. Well, I talked with city engineer Merle Medley today, who said they're looking for a way to clear this whole thing up. He said the island was put here on Britton Road so that motorists could easily determine the edge of the road and not drive into the parking lot, maybe hitting some parked cars. But if the island's causing another hazard, he says, they will look for another way of marking the edge of the road and choose the lesser of two evils. We'll keep you posted on the outcome. And while we're talking about traffic problems, Mary Turner asked In Your Corner to find out why this lane on the Northwest 63rd Street overpass crossing the Broadway extension has been closed for months and months, and nothing's been done to open it. She says it's causing major traffic tie-ups here, especially during rush hour. Well, city officials tell me the overpass was hit by a crane months ago, and it may take $40,000 and a lawsuit to get it repaired. I checked with City Councilman Bob Franks, who says the case comes up before the City Council this coming Tuesday, so a solution might be in the making. Stay tuned. To refresh your memory, Janine worked for the Alpha Mud Company on Highline Drive. She lent Alpha's then-president, David Cox, $9,000, which was later converted to stock in Alpha. The contract promised to return the money any time before the end of this year. Financial problems forced Janine to ask for her money. She's been asking since September. When I talked with David Cox last Monday, he said he would give her a check in a couple of days when there was someone there to sign the check. Then last Wednesday, he told Janine she just needed to give him a letter stating she wanted to sell her stock back, and he'd give her money. We gave him the letter, but the check was to be ready Friday afternoon. Janine went back, still no check. This time, David Cox had another letter typed up, which would allow him to sell her stock to a third party. He said he would do that in Tulsa Saturday. Janine would not sign the letter without seeing the money first. Cox did not return from Tulsa this past weekend. His office said he was ill. It's been confusing to understand who's in charge. Last Monday, David Cox said he was no longer president of Alpha Mud, but was now with Alpha Energy. 2 days later, he said he was with Rig Management Services Incorporated. He said David Schweikart was now president of Alpha Mud. However, Schweikart has also not given Janine her $9,000, as her contract with Alpha Mud states. So, in the meantime, Janine has talked with the Oklahoma Securities Commission and filed a complaint, which will allow the commission to investigate the Alpha Mud operation. Since we began this report, I've been contacted by others that claim Alpha Mud owes the money. One of them is Alpha's former sales manager, Darrell Barnett.
Well, I terminated with Alpha Mud in September of last year, and the main reason was the fact that, initially, David Cox had purchased a 79 LTD from me for use of his wife, and he was going to pay for that, and then also I purchased a 1981 LTD as a company vehicle that Alpha Mud was to pay the payments on. And in August, both of these payments I had to pay myself personally out of my pocket, and also in August, all of my expense reports that were turned in were not paid. And then late in August, I had my last salary check, which was dated July 30th, and it was returned by the bank twice for non-sufficient funds.
David Cox of Alpha responded that Barnett is bitter because he never made a sale, so they took him off salary and put him on straight commission. Cox said he quit then. I also heard from another former employee who wishes to remain unidentified for at least the time being. He alleged when he worked for Alpha, he had to buy his own office supplies. He said he was laid off with 2 other employees because Alpha allegedly could not pay him. When asked about this case, David Cox said he fired the employee for a reason he could not state on the record. However, the employee said that's incorrect because Cox gave him a good job recommendation for another job. I also heard from Jan McLaughlin, who did advertising for the Alpha Mud Company. She says Alpha has owed her money since August. The check they gave her bounced. So it appears, in addition to Janine Brandon, Alpha Mud may owe money elsewhere. In the meantime, Janine continues to call Alpha Mud every day to see if they've come up with the $9,000 they owe her.
Because my garbage can is full and I can't.
Fibroclacia.
My room trying to keep the cold out.
Yeah.
Door doesn't open though. Now over. Use the bathroom and could work, you know, a little at a time. See, I could. I'm not really. It's about 300.
They found you a place to live in a boarding house, but she.
Oh, she's just there. I don't. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know.